Well, we celebrated Memorial Day this week, and so it seemed appropriate to share the following story with you all. It's called A Story of Six Boys. One year, a teacher from Clinton, Wisconsin, accompanied his 8th grade class to visit our nation's capital. On the last night of their trip, they stopped at the Iwo Jima Memorial. This memorial is the largest bronze statue in the world and depicts one of the most famous photographs in history, that of the 6 brave soldiers who raised the American flag at the top of the rocky hill on the island of Iwo Jima during World War II. Over 100 students and chaperones piled off the school buses and headed toward that memorial. They noticed a solitary figure at the base of the statue, and as they got closer, this figure said, "Where are you guys from?" They told him they were from Wisconsin. "Hey, I'm a cheesehead too. Come on, gather around, cheeseheads, and I'll tell you a story." As it turned out, James Bradley just happened to be in Washington, D.C. at that time to speak at a memorial the following day. He was there that evening to say goodnight to his dad. He was just about to leave when he saw all those school buses drive up. When all had gathered round, he reverently began. He said, "My name is James Bradley, and I'm from Antigua, Wisconsin. My dad is on that statue back there, and I just wrote a book called Flags of Our Fathers, the story of the 6 boys that you see behind me, the 6 boys who raised that flag. The first guy putting that pole in the ground is Harlan Block. Harlan was an all-state football player. He enlisted in the Marine Corps with all of the senior members of his football team. They were off to play another type of game, that game they called war, but it didn't turn out to be a game. Harlan, at the age of 21, died with his intestines in his hands. I don't say that to gross you all out, boys. I say that because there are generals who stand in front of that statue there and talk about the glory of war. You guys need to know that most of the boys in Iwo Jima were 17, 18, and 19 years old. He pointed to the statue again. You see that next guy? That's Rene Gagnon. I'm sure it was Gagnon, but in South Louisiana. From New Hampshire. If you had taken Rene's hat off at the moment this photo was taken and looked inside to the webbing of the helmet, you would have found a photograph of his girlfriend. Rene put that there for protection because he was scared. He was 18 years old. Boys won the Battle of Iwo Jima, not old men. The next guy there, the third guy in this tableau, was Sergeant Mike Strank. Mike is my hero. He was the hero of all these guys. They called him the old man because he was so old. He was 24. When Mike would motivate his boys in training camp, he didn't say, "Let's go kill some Japanese," or "Let's go die for our country." He knew who he was talking to. He said, "You do what I say, boys, and I'll get you back to your mothers." The last guy on this side of the statue is Ira Hayes, a Pima Indian from Arizona. Ira Hayes walked off Iwo Jima. He went into the White House with my dad. President Truman told him, "You are a hero." He told reporters, "How can I feel like a hero when 250 of my buddies hit the island with me and only 27 of them walked off alive?" So you take your class at school, 250 of you guys spending a year together, having fun, doing everything together. Then all 250 of you hit the beach, but only 27 of your classmates walk off alive. That was Ira Hayes. He had images of horror in his mind. Ira Hayes died dead drunk, face down at the age of 32, probably the result of post-traumatic stress syndrome 10 years after he came home. The next guy going around the statue here is Franklin Sousley from Hilltop, Kentucky, a fun-loving hillbilly boy. He died at Iwo Jima at the age of 19. When the telegram came to tell his mother that he was dead, the neighbors could hear her scream all night into the morning. The neighbors lived a quarter of a mile away. The next guy, as we continue to go around the statue, is my dad, John Bradley from Antigo, Wisconsin, where I was raised. My dad lived until 1994, but he would never, ever give interviews. When Walter Cronkite's producers or the New York Times would call, we were trained as little kids to say, "No, sorry, sir, my dad's not here. He's in Canada fishing. There's no phone there, sir. No, we don't know when he's coming back." My dad never fished, and he never went to Canada. Usually he was sitting right there on the back porch eating his camel's soup at the table. But we had to tell the press that he was out fishing. He did not want to talk to the press. You see, my dad didn't see himself as a hero. Everyone thinks these guys are heroes because they're in a photo and they're on a monument. My dad knew better. He was a medic. John Bradley from Wisconsin was a caregiver. In Iwo Jima, he probably held over 200 boys as they died. And when boys died in Iwo Jima, they writhed and screamed in pain. When I was a little boy, my third grade teacher told me that my dad was a hero. When I went home and told my dad that, he looked at me and said, "I want you always to remember that the heroes of Iwo Jima are the guys who did not come back." So that's the story about 6 nice young boys. 3 died on Iwo Jima, and 3 came back as national heroes. Overall, 7,000 boys died on Iwo Jima in the worst battle of the history of the Marine Corps. My voice is giving out, so boys, I'll end here. Thank you guys for your time. The teacher said, suddenly the monument wasn't just one big old piece of metal with a flag sticking out of the top. It came to life before our eyes with the heartfelt words of a son who did indeed have a father who was a hero. Maybe not a hero for the reasons that most people would believe, but a hero nevertheless. This story illustrates many themes. One of them involves compassion. The compassion that I'm sure we all feel when these young boys, the children who fought that battle, we feel that for them, and those are the boys that help us be here free as we are today. Something else this story illustrates is how necessary it is for everyone on this planet to have compassion and love for everyone so that we won't have any more wars like this one. Remember that there were mothers and fathers of those Japanese boys too. They were crying for their sons too. Now is the time to start living that way and teaching others to, even if for some people it's only planting the seed of possibility, compassion for everything and everyone. Seeds grow into beautiful plants and flowers, even when transplanted from very foreign countries. Unity founder Charles Fillmore talked about imagination and zeal in his 12 powers. Well, this is an example of how it works. Imagine the world full of people who know that it is possible to live in peace and who work with zeal to spiritually advance out of barbarism into an evolved state of being. Think about taking all the time and the money and the lives and the resources that are spent on war and spending it on feeding, educating, and employing those who would otherwise fight to get these needs or perceived needs met. It's like we spiritually still think the world is flat. These things are possible, just like Columbus knew it was possible to sail to another continent and that his ships were not going to fall off of the horizon. And it starts with us as individuals in our own hearts, with our personal wars with others, and sometimes with ourselves. We can create a new world. We just need to think outside of the box and not accept anything less, anymore, in our personal lives or for the world. We have what it takes to develop another kind of understanding. We can develop the care and compassion that will stop all of the misunderstandings and the results of those misunderstandings. The time has come for world compassion, and it starts with each one of us. So how do we develop Fillmore's and the Buddhist idea of right understanding that will help us become more compassionate so that we can at least start with stopping our personal wars? The Dalai Lama says that true compassion and love, and I quote, in the context of training the mind is based on the simple recognition that others, just like ourselves, naturally aspire to be happy and to overcome suffering, and that others, just like ourselves, have the natural right to fulfill that basic aspiration. The empathy that we develop toward others based on recognition of this basic fact is universal compassion. And it includes all living things, animals, people, and Mother Earth. It's easy to have compassion for the soldiers who died for us at Iwo Jima. It's easy to have compassion for the 3.1 million children who die of hunger each day in the world. But is it as easy to have compassion for the 30 to 40% of the young Arab boys in some countries, and 20% in our own country who have no jobs, no education, no money, no family, no hope, and they're being lured into and forced sometimes into crime and terrorist groups? Is it easy for my student to have compassion for the man who shot and maimed his 46-year-old father at his front door of his Garden District home? Of course not. He did, by the way. But Jesus asked us to do so. And in actuality, it's a very practical lesson if we are to survive crime and if we are to survive wars. Jesus told us to turn the other cheek. He didn't mean not to solve the problems that prompt this violence, but he clearly told us not to respond with like violence. Buddha told us that if we learn to understand and have compassion toward those whom we perceive as enemies, we will have no enemies, and thus free ourselves of major negative emotions and suffering. And in unity, we know, as most modern medical science knows, that negativity causes emotional and physical illnesses. So it is a very practical strategy. The reason for turning the other cheek is really as much for our personal welfare as it is for the other person's. And in our global economy and our shrinking world, the misfortunes of one will become the misfortunes of all. And in an absolute sense, these people against whom we go to war are really us. The Dalai Lama brings up another interesting point. Even though a person may be negative toward you and is your enemy in this life, he or she could have been your very best friend in a past life. This person could have been your child in the last life, or a parent, or will be in the next one. Thich Nhat Hanh says that anytime we look deeply into a situation and the causes of how it actually came to be, we will see that we would probably have acted in the same way had we been in our enemy's shoes. This, he said, was the true teaching of Jesus and Buddha. When we realize this, our anger can transform these things into compassion. We simply must realize that everyone, including ourselves, is worthy of unconditional love and compassion. Jesus gave us the formula for success. Love our fellow beings. Do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Live as one with the Father and our fellow man. What ye do to the least of God's children, we do to him, because Jesus knew that we are all one. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore said, compassion is a characteristic of love and mercy prompted by an understanding heart. A compassionate mind sees the error but does not condemn. So when we are compassionate, we are using the power of love, one of Fillmore's 12 powers, which are the expressions of the divine spirit. He says that when we feel love for anyone, even if they don't give it back, we have peace in us. It's a very healing peace. Compassion is made up of two words, co, meaning together, and passion, meaning a strong feeling. And this is what compassion is. When we see someone in distress and we feel their pain as if it were our own, and if possible we strive to eliminate or lessen their pain, this is compassion. Sharing, caring, readiness to give comfort, sympathy, and concern, all are manifestations of compassion. And remember to care and love yourself. Part of our spiritual development is to love and have complete compassion for ourselves. You all know what they tell mothers on an airplane if it's going down. Take the oxygen mask and put it on yourselves securely before helping your children, right? Why? Because if they don't help themselves first, there won't be anybody there to help their children. Jesus said that he came so that we would have life and have it more abundantly. He wanted us to all feel loved as well as to offer that love to others. Love your neighbor as yourself. And many spiritual and mental health care people have told us that the greatest degree of inner tranquility comes from the development of love and compassion for ourselves and for others. Whenever we have the let them eat cake attitude, that Marie Antoinette did not say, by the way, remember, we risk a revolution and no one wins a war. Personally or nationally, no one wins a war. Millions die in national wars. Our health is ruined in personal wars. Bottom line, we need to develop compassion for our own good, for the good of everyone around us, and for the good of the world. Please join us this Tuesday at 7 p.m. here at Unity when we host 7 monks from the Sarah May Monastery who will share their thoughts on the importance of compassion and a debate on the subject. A passionate debate on compassion, we call it. It was a heartwarming time to see so many of you all last Wednesday at Rinpoche Karma's talk here at Unity. I felt like we got to experience something that was spiritually simple but profound, and we did it together. I hope that you will join us this Tuesday when we conclude our week of compassion, music, the monks, truth lessons here at Unity. One of the monks is a reincarnated Lama, like the Dalai Lama, by the way, and he and his partner will present what is really a very rare event to Americans, but an example of what goes on daily in Buddhist monasteries. 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoons, a debate. The time has come in the world for us to learn of the importance of compassion and how we can cultivate it in our daily lives personally. A critical mass of the world's people are starting to unite on this front, and they need our support. It's happening, you all. Personal and political peace is possible by cultivating compassion. I'd like to see Memorial Days for war victims become a forgotten concept for the future generations. I'd like to see the word war become a forgotten vocabulary word for future students. And this is possible when we take the responsibility to remove these concepts from our personal lives, not by being Pollyannas or naive, but by getting spiritually smart, evolving ourselves, and changing people's and perhaps our own perception about it. One vote, one word, one action, one whatever it takes to bring about change. We don't need to be thinking spiritually that the world is flat anymore, that certain things aren't possible. It all starts with us, one thought, one person at a time. This week, when a thought arises in your mind that someone doesn't deserve your love or compassion, anyone, anywhere, remind yourself to try to understand why that person is the way he or she is, and then try to see them or yourself differently with compassion. This is the beginning of world peace, where no more stories will ever be told like the one of the 6 boys you heard today, and no more crippling negativity will make you suffer mentally and physically. As the Course of Miracles says, the holiest of all spots on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. It is the truth. This is the truth that will set you free. Amen.